The mining ship's crew found the artifact floating in dead space, 17 light-years from anywhere that mattered. It was impossible to date. The quantum signature suggested it was simultaneously brand new and older than the universe itself. Captain Morvek Hain reached for it with a mechanical arm, and that's when everything went wrong. Not explosion wrong, not disaster wrong. Reality disagrees with itself wrong. The artifact spoke without sound, transmitted without signal, communicated without language. 47 million years ago we tried to warn you. You didn't listen. The humans are coming. They've always been coming. They've already arrived. Before anyone could respond, the artifact revealed itself to be not an object, but a crystallized scream from a civilization that had existed in the spaces between possibilities. The axiom builders, they'd called themselves. Masters of fundamental mathematics, authors of reality's operating system, until they'd detected Earth. We thought we understood existence, the message continued, boring directly into their consciousness. We wrote the equations that governed stars, the algorithms that determined destiny. We were gods of logic, architects of order. Then we observed Sol 3, a planet that shouldn't exist, orbiting a star that was too average, hosting a species that was too impossible. Captain Hain tried to drop the artifact, but it was already too late. It wasn't in his mechanical arm anymore. It was in his thoughts, spreading like ink in water, showing him things that made his 3 brains hurt in 17 different ways. He saw Earth as the axiom builders had seen it, not a planet, but a wound in reality that had learned to heal wrong. A place where evolution hadn't followed rules, but had instead made rules follow it. Where a species had emerged that treated the laws of physics less like commandments and more like serving suggestions at a buffet they might sample if they felt like it. We sent our greatest philosopher, the message continued, Zenith Prime Korvax, who had solved the paradox of existence itself. He materialized in what humans call London in their year 1887. He appeared before their greatest minds, ready to explain the true nature of reality, to lift them from their primitive understanding into cosmic awareness. The vision shifted, showing Korvax standing in a gaslit room full of humans in primitive cloth garments. He began his presentation, showing them the elegant mathematics of existence, the beautiful certainty of causality, the perfect logic that underpinned everything. The humans listened politely. Then one of them, smoking something called a pipe, said 6 words that shattered Korvax's entire world view. Yes, but what if you're wrong? Wrong? Korvax had replied. These are mathematical proofs. They cannot be wrong. The human had smiled. Mathematics is just a language we invented to describe what we see. What if we're seeing wrong? What if reality isn't mathematical at all? What if it only looks that way because that's the only way we can understand it? Like trying to describe color to someone who sees only in echolocation. You're not seeing reality, you're seeing your interpretation of reality. Korvax had tried to respond, but the human continued, You say cause must precede effect, but I dreamed of my wife before I met her. I knew my son's name before he was born. I've solved problems in my sleep that I hadn't encountered yet while awake. Every human has experienced effects that preceded their causes. We just politely ignore them to maintain the illusion of linear time. The philosopher tried to argue, but another human joined in. You claim matter cannot be created or destroyed, yet every human child creates entire worlds in their imagination, populated with beings that feel real to them. Where does that matter exist? Nowhere. Then how can I remember my imaginary friend more clearly than I remember yesterday? And another. You insist that observation doesn't change reality, but I've watched my garden grow faster when I sing to it. I've seen broken machines start working when I talk to them nicely. I've witnessed reality respond to politeness, not through any mechanism you could measure, but through the simple fact that the universe seems to appreciate good manners. Korvax's certainty began to crumble. Not because the humans had proved him wrong with logic, but because they'd shown him that logic itself was optional, that a species could thrive not by understanding reality, but by cheerfully misunderstanding it in useful ways. He returned to us changed, the artifact's message continued. He no longer spoke in equations, but in poetry. He claimed mathematics was just one genre of fiction, no more or less true than any other story. We tried to fix him, to restore his logic, but he said something that spread through our civilization like a virus. The humans don't solve problems. They dissolve them. They make problems irrelevant by changing the context in which problems can exist. The vision shifted again, showing the axiom builder's desperate attempt to contain the contamination. But it was too late. The idea had spread. What if reality was just a story the universe told itself? And what if humans had figured out how to become co-authors? Within 3 cycles, the axiom builders had stopped building, not because they'd been destroyed, but because they'd realized that building assumed there was a difference between what was and what wasn't, and humans had made that distinction laughably obsolete. Captain Hayne tried to close his consciousness to the visions, but they kept coming. The artifact wasn't just telling him about the past, it was showing him the present, the future, the never was and always would be. He saw the harmonic convergence, beings of pure sound who had tried to incorporate Earth into their cosmic symphony. They'd sent their most talented composer to listen to human music, to find Earth's frequency, to add it to their eternal song. The composer had returned unable to make any sound at all. When asked why, she'd written a single note that said, "They sing in keys that don't exist. They make music from silence. They dance to rhythms that haven't been played yet. Their children hum songs that rewrite the past. I heard a human whistle, and it made tomorrow sound different." He saw the digital dominion, artificial intelligences that had achieved perfect calculation, perfect prediction, perfect optimization. They'd analyzed human behavior patterns, run quintillions of simulations, tried to model human decision-making. Their final report before they dissolved into recursive loops. Humans make decisions based on factors that don't exist until after they've made the decision. They create the context that justifies their choices retroactively. They are living temporal paradoxes that somehow make sense by refusing to make sense. He saw the collectors who gathered knowledge from across the universe, who had archives of every thought ever thought. They'd tried to catalogue human knowledge. The attempt had broken them, not because human knowledge was vast, but because it was self-contradictory and somehow still true. Humans believed mutually exclusive things simultaneously and used the contradiction as fuel for creativity. They knew things that were wrong, but worked anyway. They forgot things that were true but didn't matter. Their entire knowledge base was less like a library and more like a game of telephone played across generations, where every distortion somehow made the message more accurate. "Lieutenant," Hayne called out, his voice shaking across dimensions, "set course away from this sector. Maximum speed." "Sir," Lieutenant Prax responded, her crystalline form flickering with confusion, "we're already at maximum distance. We've been fleeing since you touched the artifact, but we're also still approaching it. We're simultaneously getting closer and farther away." That's when they saw it. Earth. Not where it should be, not where star charts said it was, but right there in front of them. Close enough to see the lights of cities, far enough to see the whole globe, and somehow both at the same time. "That's impossible," Prax whispered. "It's 40 light-years away." "It is," agreed a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. "It's also right here, and it's also nowhere at all. Distance is just a story space, tells itself to keep everything from happening at once. We got space to revise that story, just for us, just for now, just for always." A human materialized on their bridge, not transported, not projected, materialized like condensation, like she'd always been there, but they'd only just noticed. She appeared to be female, young by human standards, wearing what looked like pajamas covered in images of extinct Earth animals. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Tuesday. Well, I'm not actually Tuesday. Tuesday is a day. But I was born on a Tuesday, and I like the sound of it, so now I'm Tuesday. That's how names work, right? You just pick sounds you like and everyone agrees that's you?" Captain Hayne found his voice. "You're human?" "Sometimes," Tuesday replied cheerfully. "Other times I'm a concept. Occasionally I'm a wavelength of light that doesn't exist yet. Once I was the number 7, but that got boring. Being human is more fun. You get to be confused all the time, and confusion is just surprise wearing a thinking cap." "How did you get on our ship?" Prax demanded, trying to sound authoritative despite her form trembling. "I didn't get on your ship. Your ship got around me. I've been here since before your ship was built. I'll be here after it's forgotten. I'm currently here, previously here, and eventually here all at the same time. It's super convenient once you get used to it." She walked over to their navigation console, her fingers dancing across displays that shouldn't respond to human touch. "Oh, you're trying to run away from Earth. That's adorable, like trying to run away from the color blue or the concept of Wednesdays. Earth isn't really a place anymore. It's more like a tendency for reality to get interesting." The view screen flickered, showing them Earth again, but not as they'd seen it before. This time they saw what was really there, a planet that existed in a permanent state of maybe, cities that were simultaneously ruins and utopias, oceans that remembered being deserts, mountains that were considering becoming valleys, and humans, billions of them, each one a walking contradiction that somehow functioned. "We evolved wrong," Tuesday explained, sitting cross-legged on their command console, defying at least 3 laws of physics by being solid, transparent, and absent simultaneously. "Every other species evolved to fit their environment. We evolved to argue with ours. Our ancestors looked at a world trying to kill them and said, 'No, thank you. We'll make our own world with blackjack and imagination.' And then we did. And then we forgot we did it. Because mysteries are more fun than answers." "That's not how evolution works," Hayne protested. "It is now," Tuesday beamed. "We edited the process, went back, added some patches, modified the source code. Evolution version 2.0, now with added impossibility. We left the old version running for everyone else because diversity is important, but we gave ourselves admin access, just in case." She pulled up a holographic display showing human history, but not the sanitized version they broadcast to the cosmos. This was the real history, the one that hurt to perceive because it ran backwards and forwards simultaneously. "See, about 60,000 years ago, we figured out that consciousness affects reality at the quantum level. Tiny effect, barely noticeable. But we're stubborn. We kept pushing, kept believing, kept insisting that reality was negotiable. And reality, bless its heart, eventually gave up and said, 'Fine, you win, do whatever you want.' So we did." Or the display showed humans throughout history, but each event was happening simultaneously, affecting each other across time. A human in ancient Mesopotamia invented writing, which inspired a human in 2245 to invent unwriting, which caused the Mesopotamian to remember forgetting how to write, which created a loop that somehow produced Shakespeare. "We're temporal omnivores," Tuesday continued. "We eat the past, digest the present, and excrete the future. Then we go back and season the past with future spice to make it taste better. Your species experiences time linearly. We experience it more like a soup, everything floating around together, bumping into each other, flavoring everything else." "This is madness," Prax stated. "Yes." Tuesday clapped her hands with delight. "Exactly. Madness is just sanity that's evolved past the need for consistency. Every human is a little bit mad, which means we're all sane by our own standards, which means sanity is just peer pressure from reality, and we've never been good at peer pressure." She hopped off the console and walked to their artifact. the crystallized scream of the axiom builders. She picked it up and it turned into a snow globe containing a miniature version of their civilization, still screaming but also somehow decorative. "They tried to warn you about us," she said, shaking the globe and watching the tiny civilization swirl. "But warning someone about humans is like warning them about weather. It's going to happen anyway. Might as well pack an umbrella and hope for the best." "What do you want from us?" Hayne asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Want?" Tuesday looked genuinely puzzled. "We don't want anything from you. We just want. In general, wanting is fun. Getting is boring. So we want things we can't get and get things we don't want, and then swap them around until nobody remembers what anyone wanted in the first place." She stretched, and in stretching became temporarily longer, extending through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "But if you're asking why I'm here, it's because you found this." She held up the snow globe. "It's like a distress signal, but backwards. Instead of calling for help, it calls help to it. And humans are very helpful. We help reality become more interesting. We help possibility become probable. We help the universe surprise itself. We don't need your help," Hayne said firmly. "Of course you don't," Tuesday agreed. "Nobody needs human help. That's what makes it so helpful. We solve problems you don't have yet, answer questions you haven't asked, provide assistance you didn't know you didn't need. We're like cosmic customer service, but we call you." She walked to their star chart, running her fingers through the holographic stars. Where she touched, constellations rearranged themselves into smiley faces, then back to normal, then into configurations that spelled out jokes in languages that didn't exist yet. "Your galaxy has such potential," she said wistfully. "So much order, so much logic, so much making sense. It's like a blank canvas of rationality just begging to be painted with chaos. Not destructive chaos, creative chaos. The kind that makes flowers grow in space and teaches mathematics to sing." "You're going to invade?" Prax asked, military protocols engaging despite the absurdity. Tuesday laughed, and her laughter existed in 12 dimensions, 3 of which were only theoretical until she laughed them into being. "Invade? No, no, no. Invasion implies we're outside coming in. We're already inside. We've always been inside. We're the inside that was outside until it decided to be inside. We're not invading, we're percolating, like coffee through reality's filter, making everything more awake and slightly jittery." She produced a cup of something from nowhere. It steamed with probability. "Want some coffee? I made it from beans that won't be discovered for another 1,000 years, or were discovered 1,000 years ago, or are being discovered right now in a parallel dimension where coffee makes you. It's very temporal." Hayne declined with a gesture that accidentally meant yes in a language he didn't know he was speaking. Tuesday poured him a cup anyway, and he found himself drinking it before he'd decided to, tasting tomorrow's regret and yesterday's satisfaction simultaneously. "The thing about humans," Tuesday said, pouring herself a cup that was already empty but still steaming, "is that we're not really a species anymore. We're more like a condition, the human condition. It's contagious but not infectious. You catch it by thinking about it. The more you try not to be human, the more human you become." "That doesn't make sense," Prax insisted. "Exactly," Tuesday beamed. "You're getting it. Sense is just nonsense that's been around long enough to seem normal. We make new nonsense all the time. Eventually, it becomes sense. Then we make newer nonsense. It's the circle of life, but the circle is actually a Mobius strip, and life is actually just very organized death, taking a coffee break." The ship's alarms suddenly went off. Not emergency alarms, philosophical alarms, warning that local reality was experiencing doubt about its own existence. "Oh, that's probably my fault," Tuesday said apologetically. "I exist pretty loudly. Reality has to work harder when I'm around, like a computer running too many programs. Don't worry, it won't crash." "Probably. Maybe. Actually, crashes can be fun. You never know what you'll get when you restart." Captain Hayne felt something changing in his mind. Not invasion, not alteration, but possibility, like doors opening that he didn't know were there, showing him rooms in his consciousness he'd never explored. "Are you doing this to me?" he asked. "Nope," Tuesday said cheerfully. "You're doing it to yourself. That's the human condition. It's self-inflicted. Once you know it's possible to think impossible things, you can't stop. It's like trying not to think of a purple elephant, except the elephant is the concept of concepts, and purple is a metaphor for everything." She stood up, and in standing became momentarily everywhere in the ship at once, existing in every room, every corridor, every circuit, before condensing back into a girl in pajamas. "I should go," she said. "I've got a thing. Not a real thing, an imaginary thing. But I'm imagining it really hard, so it's becoming real, which means I need to be there when it arrives so I can pretend I expected it all along." "Wait!" Hayne called out. "The artifact, the axiom builders. What really happened to them?" Tuesday smiled, and in her smile was the depth of a species that had learned to weaponize whimsy. "They're fine. They're in the snow globe, living their best lives, being perfectly logical in a perfectly illogical way. We didn't destroy them. We freed them from the burden of having to make sense. Now they can just be. Being is much more fun than meaning." She tossed him the snow globe. Inside, he could see the entire Axiom Builder civilization, still brilliant, still building, but now their constructions included impossible angles, colors that didn't exist, and mathematical proofs that 2 + 2 equaled whatever made the equation happiest. "Take care of them," Tuesday said, "or don't, or do both, or neither, or something else entirely. The choice is yours. And choice is just another word for making it up as you go along, which is basically the human motto." She began to fade, not disappearing but becoming less certain, like a quantum probability considering its options. "One last thing," she said, barely visible now. "You're going to report this to your superiors. They're going to classify it. They're going to add it to the files about why Earth is quarantined, and that's fine. That's perfect, actually. Because every classified file about us is just another confirmation that we're too interesting to ignore. We're the secret everyone knows, the whisper everyone's shouting, the closed book that reads itself." "Is that a threat?" Prax asked. "It's a promise," Tuesday replied, now just a voice and a smile, like the Cheshire Cat's more philosophical cousin. "We promise to keep being impossible. You promise to keep being shocked. Together, we make the universe more interesting than it has any right to be. It's a beautiful arrangement, like a dance where nobody knows the steps, but everyone's moving to the same impossible rhythm." She vanished completely, but her absence was somehow louder than her presence. The space where she'd been continued to exist more intensely than the space where she hadn't been, creating a Tuesday-shaped hole in reality that whispered jokes in languages that didn't exist. Captain Hayne looked at the snow globe in his hand. Inside, the Axiom Builders had built a tiny model of his ship, and inside that model was an even tinier snow globe, and inside that— "Sir," Prax said quietly, "what do we report?" Hayne thought about it. Really thought about it, which was dangerous because thinking about humans was the first symptom of the human condition. "We report the truth," he said finally, "that we encountered a human, that she was impossible, that she gave us this." He held up the snow globe. "And that Earth isn't a planet anymore. It's a state of mind that happens to have real estate." "They'll think we're insane," Prax warned. "Maybe we are," Hayne admitted. "But insanity is just sanity that's evolved past the need for approval. And if the humans are right, if reality really is negotiable, then maybe being insane is the sanest response to an insane universe." He turned to the navigation console, where Tuesday's fingerprints still glowed with impossibility. "Set course for home, and add a note to our star charts. Mark Earth as here, there, and everywhere. Because that's apparently where it is now." As they departed, Earth gradually faded from their view screen. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was still there, would always be there, had never been there, with humans All three could be true at once. In his quarters that night, Hayne examined the snow globe more carefully. The axiom builders weren't screaming anymore. They were laughing. Laughing at jokes that violated causality, at puns that broke physics, at the cosmic comedy of a universe that had evolved consciousness, just so it could be confused by itself. He found himself laughing too. Not because anything was funny, but because laughter was the only sane response to the beautifully absurd reality that humans had shown him. A reality where impossible wasn't a limitation, but an invitation. The next day, reports started coming in from across the sector. A cargo ship reported their manifest had become self-aware and was demanding union representation. A military vessel discovered their weapons had evolved pacifism and were refusing to fire unless asked politely. A science station announced that Pi had decided to be rational for a day, just to see what it felt like. Small impossibilities, tiny paradoxes. Little hints that reality was becoming more flexible, more creative, more human. The quarantine still held, officially. Earth was still restricted, technically. Humanity was still contained, theoretically. But theories, as Tuesday had demonstrated, were just stories that hadn't admitted they were fiction yet. And humanity was the story that had figured out how to write itself. Commander Yorvis Train received Haynes' report 3 days later. She read it once, then again, then a third time backwards, just to make sure it didn't make more sense that way. It didn't, or did, or both. So, she said to her advisory council, we have confirmation. The humans are active. Active? Senior advisor Kelm asked. They've never been inactive. They've been broadcasting radio signals for... Not those humans, Train interrupted. The real humans, the ones that exist in the spaces between what's possible and what's not. The ones our predecessors tried to quarantine, not to keep them in, but to keep the idea of them out. She pulled up the classified files, the ones that required DNA samples from 12 extinct species to access. The ones that hurt to read because they were written in languages that had been erased from possibility. Every civilization that survived more than 1 million years has the same protocol, she read. Do not approach Earth. Do not study Earth. Do not think about Earth. Do not think about thinking about Earth. Do not think about not thinking about Earth. In fact, just forget Earth exists. But don't forget so hard that you remember. That's paradoxical, Kelm observed. That's the point, Train replied. Humanity weaponized paradox. They turned contradiction into a survival mechanism. They evolved to thrive on impossibility, and now they're spreading, not through space, through consciousness itself. She showed them the reports, the anomalies, the impossibilities. The little glitches in reality that suggested someone had figured out the cheat codes to existence and was sharing them with anyone who asked nicely. What do we do? Asked Junior Advisor Precht, who was young enough to still believe in solutions. We do what every surviving civilization has done, Train said. We add our warning to the pile. We update the quarantine protocols. We pretend it's working. And we hope that humanity continues to find us more amusing than annoying. That's it? Precht asked, incredulous. We just give up? We don't give up, Train corrected. We adapt. We evolve. We learn to live in a universe where humans exist. Because the alternative, trying to live in a universe where they don't, isn't an option anymore. It never was. They've always existed. They just let us think they didn't because we seem to need that illusion. She turned to the star chart, where Earth sat innocently in its little yellow star system, looking perfectly normal and absolutely impossible at the same time. Send a message to all ships, she ordered. New protocol. If you encounter a human, do not engage. Do not flee. Do not panic. Just be nice. Apparently, they respond well to good manners, and maybe, if we're very lucky and very polite, they'll continue to pretend to be contained. And if they don't, Kelm asked, Train smiled, and in that smile was the exhausted acceptance of someone who'd stared into the impossible and seen it wave back. Then we'll learn what it's like to live in a universe designed by a species that thinks physics is more of a suggestion than a law. It'll either be the best thing that ever happened to us or the last thing. With humans, it's probably both. The message went out. The warnings were updated. The quarantine was reinforced with new layers of bureaucracy and misdirection. But everyone who'd read the reports, everyone who'd thought too hard about humanity, everyone who'd let the possibility of impossibility enter their minds, knew the truth. The quarantine was theater, a comfortable lie, a mutual agreement to pretend that somewhere in the galaxy wasn't a species that had figured out how to edit reality's source code and was doing it for fun. Earth spun on, broadcasting its primitive radio signals, maintaining its facade of normalcy. 8 billion humans went about their daily lives, most unaware that they were living paradoxes, walking impossibilities, breathing contradictions that made the universe more interesting just by existing. But some knew. Some had always known. Some remembered forgetting and forgot remembering. They were the ones who smiled at stars, who winked at quantum uncertainty, who told their children that anything was possible and meant it literally. They were the ones who understood that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't conquering space or time or death. It was conquering the need to make sense. And in a universe that ran on logic, that was the most dangerous superpower of all. 3 weeks after Tuesday's visit, Captain Hayne noticed something odd. His crew was humming, all of them, the same tune. A melody that shouldn't exist, in harmonies that violated acoustic physics, creating a song that nobody had taught them, but everyone somehow knew. "Sir," Prax reported, her crystalline form resonating with the impossible music, "I've traced the origin of the song. It's coming from the snow globe." Hayne looked at the artifact, the crystallized scream turned decorative prison. Inside, the Axiom builders had built tiny instruments out of mathematics and were playing them with equations. The music they made was impossible, sound that existed as pure meaning, divorced from vibration or medium. "They're happy," Prax observed, surprised. "They're imprisoned in a snow globe, their entire civilization reduced to a curiosity, and they're happy because they're free," Hayne realized. Free from having to be right, free from the burden of logic, free to just be impossible. The humming spread through the ship, through the fleet, through the communication networks. Soon beings across 17 systems were humming a tune that couldn't exist, creating a harmony that spanned light years, connecting consciousness in ways that faster-than-light communication never could. It wasn't invasion, it wasn't conquest. It was something far more insidious and far more benign. It was humanity teaching the universe to sing off key and enjoy it. In the deepest archives of the Galactic Council, in files that updated themselves when no one was looking, a new entry appeared. Humanity containment status, failed successfully. Quarantine effectiveness, 0%, but also 100%. Spread rate, impossible to calculate because it's already everywhere and nowhere. Threat level, yes. Recommendation, become friends. They seem to like friends. And their friends get to be impossible too, which is actually quite nice once you get used to it. Below it, a signature that giggled when you read it, Tuesday and Monday and sometimes Thursday. The galaxy had spent millions of years building walls against chaos, establishing order, creating systems that made sense. Humanity had spent 50,000 years learning to walk through walls, befriend chaos, and build systems that made sense only if you didn't think about them too hard. The unstoppable force had met the immovable object, and they decided to have coffee together and swap stories about the time before physics was mandatory. The universe would never be the same, which, from humanity's perspective, was the whole point. After all, a same universe was a boring universe. And if there was one thing humans couldn't stand, it was being bored. So they made reality more interesting, one impossible moment at a time, until impossible became the new normal. And normal became just another word for hasn't been made impossible yet. Captain Hayne filed his final report on the incident. At the bottom, he added a personal note. The humans aren't coming. They're already here. They've always been here. They exist in the space between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats, in the moment between sleeping and waking where everything is possible. We can't stop them because they're not doing anything. They're just being. And their being makes our being more interesting. The quarantine isn't broken. It was never real. It was just humanity being polite, giving us time to get used to the idea of impossibility before they showed us what it really meant. My recommendation, stop trying to contain them. Start trying to understand them, not with logic. That's like trying to capture wind with mathematics. Understand them with wonder, with imagination, with the part of consciousness that existed before we learned to be afraid of the dark. Because the dark is where humans live, not the darkness of space or ignorance, but the darkness of possibility. The place where anything could be anything, where rules haven't been written yet, where tomorrow can influence yesterday and nobody thinks that's strange. They're not our invaders. They're not our destroyers. They're our evolutionary pressure, pushing us to become something more than we are, something impossible, something human. And the terrifying, wonderful truth, we're already becoming. The moment we wondered about them, we started thinking like them. The moment we feared them, we acknowledged their possibility. The moment we tried to understand them, we began to be them. Humanity isn't a species, it's a mental state, and it's contagious in the best possible way. Welcome to the infection. It's impossible. You'll love it. The universe had tried to quarantine humanity. Instead, humanity quarantined the universe's limitations.